Hey guys, so coming in with the first episode of the Coviderviews. I'm here with my brother, Cameron Brick. So my idea is that as I prepare for my unicycle journey, since it's happening after this pandemic, what I wanted to do was, for those who are willing, potentially interview them about their experience during this time, and also just inquire a little bit about like what gives them meaning and purpose, because that's something that has fascinated me and that I'm trying to learn about and pursue in my own life. And I feel like that is a huge foundation for my recovery from both addiction and mental illness. So I'm here to do my first episode with my brother, and
It's the dog.
Cam, why don't you give a little bit of backstory about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, yes, hi, and it's a pleasure to join your channel and your journey. I grew up in Santa Cruz, like you, and then I moved to Oregon at some point, and then I moved back, and then I moved to Spain, and I'm hoping these noises are not too disturbing to your video. Yeah, gosh, the journey. It's been a journey. I live now in the Netherlands, where I am working as an academic. I'm assistant professor of social psychology at the University of Amsterdam. And as a psychologist, I spend a lot of time thinking about why people do things and how we can relate to each other with more harmony, and how we can accomplish social goals and those sorts of things. Yeah, that's I spent a lot of time working, so that when you mentioned what am I doing, that's what comes to mind.
Yeah. And what made you become interested in psychology?
Gosh, from the beginning, this interest in psychology, I guess, was a bit of an accident. I actually I was more interested in music when I went to school, and played guitar like you, well, I started with piano and then guitar. At university, I was doing a lot of singing, and I was a music major, and then I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't doing very well in my classes, my music classes, and wasn't that interested in it. At some point, the study turned from, like, oh, let's all listen to music we really like, to let's figure out how to write a canon or 18th century counterpoint, and what's the difference between an augmented sixth chord that's French versus Italian. And I found that I didn't care, and that made it hard both to succeed and to feel passion for the next steps. So I switched my major, and I did that kind of casually. It was just that the only other classes I was taking, one of them happened to be psychology, and it was so exciting to learn about the range of topics, from how does visual perception work to why do people dislike people who don't look like them, and all kinds of, I don't know, it was just really rich, and part of it was probably also that the professors in that department were just particularly good. Like, they were very energetic and enthusiastic, and I wanted to hang out with them more. Sometimes we make big life decisions that are based on little things like that.
Interesting. And where were you going to school at this time?
Oh yeah, so this is Reed College, which is in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
It's a small residential bachelor's 4-year school. Yeah, a kind of a quirky, weird place with strong academics. So a good fit for me.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard and I've experienced in my own life through talking to people that many times there's sort of a shift where they think my life is going in this direction, and then at some point, maybe sooner or later, they realize that, this isn't actually what I was interested in doing, and switch over. I'm also fascinated in psychology, and I think that potentially after my unicycle journey, I might go back to school and try to try to major in that in some form or fashion.
Right.
I think there will be some amount of discovery on the journey to pinpoint, what field. So that's awesome. What are you doing? What does your work look like now? I know you're living in Amsterdam at the present moment.
Yeah. So the academic journey to be a professor has been a little bit rough. Even though I'm succeeding, quote unquote, it has been, it's needed me to move a lot. So I graduated with my PhD in 2015, so 6 years since then I've lived in 3 countries and trying to just publish papers and get more and more secure jobs. What it looks like right now, I'm 55% teaching, so I do a lot of supervision of student projects, of theses. I teach at the BA and MA levels. I teach classes, of course, in a couple different departments. And we're co-teaching almost all of our classes. That's unique. That's different than what I did before. So I used to work at Hamilton College in New York. And one of the things that I experienced there was that they would say something like, okay, you teach 5 classes this year. Boom. And then you do everything for the class. Now these classes are fairly small, but in my current department, we tend to co-teach. So I'll teach 4 lectures within a class that has a bunch of other stuff going on, and then we co-coordinate the exams, the assessments, tutorials. And now that this is again another big school, the classes are large. So I'm coordinating an exam shortly that has 200 something students, and
wow.
Because of the pandemic, we're doing all this supervision online, so they're going to log in, and we're going to look at them during the exam for some reason. Even though this exam is open book, I guess we still have to coordinate that they're not talking to each other, or I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like it's you have to figure it out in a whole new way.
Yeah, fortunately, there's a team that helps with these sorts of things, and so that's half of my job. The other half is research. So I guess the grand vision is to understand ourselves better and to contribute to society, to develop knowledge and to implement the knowledge we have in other settings, like in a corporate setting, in the governmental setting. But in practice, we are judged a lot by how much we produce, what kinds of papers and in what kinds of journals. So I spend a lot of my time analyzing data and writing it with an eye towards trying to publish it in leading journals.
Very, very nice. I know you've talked before about sort of an internal conflict about feeling like trying to weigh what, like, having more of a impact on the grassroots level versus like sort of what you're doing now. I mean, tell me like a little bit more about that
Sure,
internal struggle.
Sure, yeah, we have talked about that. And I guess I should say a lot of my work has been focusing on climate change for the last 10 years. And I feel really motivated about this problem that we're all facing, and it's become increasingly clear that the physical science is very solid. Like, we know that the Earth is warming, we know we're doing it, we know how it's happening, we know what we need to do, there's hope. And then the missing piece seems very behavioral, very social science. Like,
right.
Why aren't we doing it? What can we communicate to help people get behaving in a more productive fashion? And then there's the sort of individual level behaviors like diet and transportation, but there's also the broader social behaviors like political engagement, leadership, education, voting. And so I'm studying this range of responses to environmental problems, and I have become particularly interested in activism, like protesting, nonviolent protesting, of course, and groups like Extinction Rebellion, 350.org, Fridays for Future. Been distantly involved with some campus groups called Green New Deal, like at the University of California, San Diego. And I'm finally coming around to your question now. The tension is that I'm sort of aware that I could be serving these groups with my skills and helping them do messaging, helping them communicate with their members and develop new members, helping write up their activities for the general public. None of those things help my career progression. What helps my career is to, well, not zero, but really the primary thing about my career is this publishing of papers and getting grants and being a leading intellectual figure within my sub-discipline, well, and across disciplines. But so I could, let's say I collect some data with the Extinction Rebellion, which we did 2019. Then how much of my time do I spend trying to package that into a paper to publish in the journal, whatever, compared to how much of my time do I spend looking at the data and thinking, how is this useful to the movement? Who can I communicate this to? And how shall I communicate it to help people with the activism process? I feel one pull in my career and one pull as a citizen, and they're actually surprisingly disconnected. So that has been a bit of a struggle for me. But there's one big transition for me which is coming up. I'm anticipating, I'm hoping that my job will become permanent this coming January. And if that occurs, it removes a lot of pressure. I will still be experiencing this tension, but it won't any longer have, the story won't any longer be do this or you might not be able to continue to live where you live with your partner and in the city. And so a permanent job is a very big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that would add a much desired layer of like stability. That's so that you can have that be present, and it could allow for more time to be able to, work with climate change in the way that you desire to, kind of like on the side or in addition. It'll make the scales be easier to balance.
I think that's right. And it's been a kind of a journey for me coming around to more service as I get older, as the thing that I feel like I should be doing with my day.
Yeah.
How has your experience been of like how you think about service to others compared to 10 years ago?
Quite profound, actually. I've definitely especially in the last couple of years, found that inside of me, I crave being of service to others. I've been through this like deep depression and horrific mental illness, and especially in the last year, I've kind of come out of the other side, and so I feel like I've had an experience that potentially I could be able to help other people who might be going through a similar experience or also coming out the other side of it, and provide some sort of connection in that regard.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me personally, like being of service, it provides something that I was seeking out, like in my addiction. It's a feeling on the inside that that makes me feel alive. And I'm kind of just starting to figure out what that might look like in my life. Like I know when I was an adolescent, a sophomore in high school, I went through a time in my life where I felt very alone, very isolated, unable to, for whatever reason, I didn't feel safe talking about what I was going through with my parents or my friends, which I didn't have very many at that point in my life. And it would have been really nice to be able to process those emotions with somebody in a safe way. And so I think part of it, I would like to learn how to, work with adolescents in that way. So yeah, to be able to help people that are suffering from some sort of addiction, whether it be, substances or food, or I feel like addiction is a wide-ranging sort of relation to a certain experience to potentially try to fill some sort of void.
Yeah.
And I've been through that, and I've come out the other side, so I feel like trying to help others deal with that in a healthy and productive way, that brings me a lot of joy and fulfillment too.
Yeah.
So
I think I have had the same experience, because when I was a child, I had a lot of difficult feelings. I think we all do. Childhood is difficult. But I was struggling to know what was I supposed to be? This is also a thing that we discover when we're teenagers. And I was doing well in school, but that's not itself an identity, or it didn't answer this question for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also used drugs when I was a child as a way to resolve some of that buzzing discomfort of what it's just like to be alive and have feelings. and it was only much later. I think I was also avoiding hard work on purpose. Which is so ironic now from the other side of it, because the ease that I was seeking is through hard work. Yeah, but it was like so counterintuitive for me.
Wow.
I wanted to be so comfortable that I shied away from being good at anything or going deeply into things. And then I had more and more need for those other kinds of drugs and comforts, because I had less and less of my own foundation.
Right.
Yeah, I think that characterized my teen years pretty well.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going through this similar process, I think, right now, a little bit like later in my life, but I feel like the more that I'm discovering a direction that I want to go in, and it's interesting too, because there's like the 5-year plan of the unicycle tour,
yeah.
And then there's like what's going to come next. But the more I explore that, and the more I feel like I zero in on my dreams, it's almost like a defensive balm to addiction. You know, it's something that it makes addiction seem less and less relevant, because I have this direction. And when I look back on my life, so I had these childhood experiences, and then I got to be an adolescent, and I discovered substances, and I really latched onto them, and I wasn't necessarily like certain about, a direction or a purpose. And at that time, I wanted to design roller coasters. That had been like my identity.
Deep passion.
Like what I told everyone when I was growing up was like, yep, I love roller coasters, I'm going to design them. And then I sort of had this identity crisis when I got into high school, because I discovered that math is not necessarily my strong suit. And I'm like, well, if I desire to be an engineer, I should probably be, at least semi-adept at mathematics.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think going through that, in addition to the drugs, it made things challenging. And then when I got a little bit older, I used a relationship that I was in too to try to, cover up the pain of the unknown. And it hasn't been until the last couple of years that I've gotten, some distance from both addiction to substances and addiction to a person, that I've really been able to do that internal work of contemplating the direction I want to go.
That's exactly how I see your journey, by the way, and beautifully said. It's so hard when we're hurting and we don't have the right tools and we're in a difficult spiral. It's almost like to give up the crutches that we're using, relationships, substances, whatever. It makes us more vulnerable. So it's again one of these contradictions that, like, to be healthy, you have to then be more uncomfortable first. That's very difficult. But yeah, everything came sort of together what turned out to be a reasonably good time for you. I mean, that you could shed the relationship, shed the substance abuse, and start on a journey back in your hometown with the family to support, and your job has been huge as well, actually, to give you some of that service and some of your independence, and you've done very well in that, and it's been great to see.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to riding to Amsterdam on my unicycle journey.
I've never bicycles are everywhere in the Netherlands, but I've never seen a unicycle, and I think you'll be well received.
Thanks, man. So we'll switch over a little bit to the pandemic. What's been your experience in the last a little over a year?
I had a kind of a funny thing happen to me at the very beginning of the pandemic, which was that I was in a long distance relationship with my girlfriend. And so I had moved to the Netherlands, but she was still in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I went for the weekend to visit her, taking the train. And I arrived and I had a 3-day bag. I had just a couple pairs of socks, and I didn't bring anything because what do you need? It was fine. And just one little backpack. And that was March 2020, and the UK closed its borders temporarily and went into lockdown because of the pandemic.
So you got stuck.
And so we sort of saw this happening, and I had the opportunity actually to get on the train and just go away. And she suggested that I stay, and it was difficult for me to stay in the UK because I had just moved. I was sort of 2 months in my new place. I was trying so hard. I had moved into this apartment that didn't have any ceiling lights and didn't have any curtains, and I had no furniture, and I was sort of trying to do everything at the same time that I was learning all these new systems, like signing up for the equivalent of a social security number and a bank account. And I had a hard time with these, in part because it was much in Dutch, and I don't speak Dutch yet. Anyway, whatever. I didn't like the idea of staying the rest of the week and taking a different train, but I just I heard from her okay, this is important, and so I stayed. And then that weekend trip turned into 5 months in the UK. So that for me was pretty weird because I had been living in the UK. That's where she and I met. So in one way it was comfortable. This is the old place I used to be. Even I could see my own friends and played tennis a lot, which I loved. And so I rejoined my own tennis club after having left it. And then I was there 5 months. And then, so that period of the pandemic was pretty comfortable for me because I was back to a place I knew well, where English is the native language, and my job went 100% online, so there was no need for me to be physically in Amsterdam, so that was great actually, and for us to be together, obviously it was a lot easier than being apart.
Yeah.
Then I went back to the Netherlands. Of course, you can't stay in a foreign country where you don't have a job indefinitely, but 5 months is pretty good. Americans can stay in the UK quite a while with very little purpose, but legally you're not supposed to work. So anyway, it was a bit iffy, but I stayed. Pandemic, special circumstances. I went back to the Netherlands. And then I had what was for me a pretty difficult period of long distance from my partner while things are still in lockdown. And the Netherlands had they've been more and less strict than the UK in various moments, but no restaurants, no, you can't even walk with 4 people outside in a group.
Wow.
So strict, and I just worked from home all day. Okay. All in all, it's been a very comfortable period for me compared to what other people are going through.
Yeah.
At one point, we got these stimulus checks from the U.S. government. I have a job. I'm okay. I'm stable. And I mentioned to my partner that I was getting this money surprise from the government, and she said, "Oh, so you're gonna donate it to people that need it more than you? Is that what you just said?"
I hadn't thought about it.
So I did. That second check I donated.
Awesome.
And And it was an interesting feeling. I'm not so used to donations bigger than, I don't know, $30 or something.
Philanthropy.
So, well, it was, but this was $1,000. So that was different. That was a different experience. But
how did it feel?
Yeah, good. It did feel good. I kind of wished, so like imagine that you're walking by, this is the famous thought example of Peter Singer, who's an ethicist. Imagine you're walking by a shallow pond and there's a child drowning in the pond and you're wearing a very nice suit.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to jump in the pond because my suit is nice. Everyone knows that you're a monster if you don't jump in the pond.
Right.
But if I click on my computer, click, confirm, and then the money goes, like, you could save lives.
Yeah.
Malaria nets, whatever it is. You can restore sight to people who have cataracts,
right.
Cheap surgery. But you don't get that emotional sort of reassurance and meaning because it just vanishes. So I both felt good, but then I was also thinking, gosh, I wish I knew anything about the people who this is helping, their stories.
Right.
I wish I could hear more about them because it would help me feel that it really did something rather than just vanishing from my account.
Just having like a direct line to where the money's going.
And that's hard to do because, of course, if you're a charity, that's all distraction from the actual helping of the people. Get the money, distribute it in the way that's most helpful. But as a psychologist, we need those emotional relationships. And I guess this is why people donate $50 million to the university they went to. For me, that makes no sense. Like, I get that universities are important and we should support them probably more publicly than privately.
Yeah.
But like, that's so many lives you could save $50 million. Instead of building a new hockey rink or something. I cannot be motivated by that. There's a movement, if any of your watchers are interested, called effective altruism.
Yeah, I've heard about effective altruism.
And I'm quite convinced that their central argument is good. That we should be prioritizing a certain set of actions with our time and our money. And then if you want to support the university you went to or whatever, great.
Yeah.
Do it. But it's in the context of your main actions should be the most effective ones at helping other people with their suffering.
I absolutely agree 100% with that, and I'm I've been doing a little bit of research myself on how to, participate in effective altruism in a way that makes sense for me at this point in my life.
Well, you're at the beginning of your working life, really. So, so there's so many more hours you're going to devote, and it's great to be strategic about it.
Awesome. Well, I also have a similar, my pandemic experience has been one of just probably the most growth that I've ever experienced in my life so far.
And do you think that has to do with the pandemic specifically?
I don't necessarily think so. It feels like this sort of weird coincidence, or the stars aligning in sort of a unique way, because it started, I don't know, February or March of 2020, and in May was when I had, basically the lowest point of my life mental health wise, and it caused me to kind of step back and reevaluate everything that was going on, and I made some changes, and right after that point was when I started my YouTube channel and really started thinking about how, tapping into the joy that I feel when I ride my unicycle, and how I can implement that into, a journey that could help me become even more independent and inspired towards my purpose, and potentially help others too. And I've just kind of followed that string, and just looking back, the pandemic itself didn't affect me personally, in that I don't really know others that have, I don't know anyone personally who's died of the coronavirus. I feel pain for the people that were affected intensely, and for me personally, I've grown so much. So it's really interesting to make that connection of the last year. So I wanted to talk a little bit about addiction. How would you classify addiction, and what does that word mean to you?
Yeah. Well, this isn't my area of psychology. A lot of people, when they
Doesn't matter.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm just clarifying that a lot of people, when they hear psychology, they think of the sort of clinical and treatment side of what it means for mental health. And
Yeah.
I never studied that. I'm a different kind of beast that lives in the university and writes papers. But I have thought a lot about this, and I think that when I was much younger, what I thought was that the addiction to, let's say, a substance, although it could be an activity, or you mentioned even relationships earlier, I thought that it was in the stimulus, like that addiction is within cannabis or cocaine or something. And I see it much more now as an interaction between a person and their feelings and thoughts, and a social context, and that includes their history and their childhood, and some stimulus, let's say the drug. It's almost like the drug is not even the important part of it. And so what I have come to understand is, or my personal opinion on the matter, is that an addiction is when you have a certain behavior that is harming other things that are important to you in your life. And so that's pretty broad, actually. I mean, I could be addicted to video games just in that I never exercise anymore, and then that's bad for my health. Is that an addiction? Yeah, I think that's a fair use, at least not clinical, but like my personal use of the term. And so it's broad, it could be all kinds of things, and a lot of the time it's not even so much about the specific behavior so much as it's about the fact that we have these internal drives. We want to feel good, pleasure, like eating a chocolate sundae on a warm day, those things, but also, social connection to other people, and feeling like we have some control over what's happening in our lives. And if you threaten these things in someone's life because they don't have a job that's fulfilling their expectations, or they don't have the social relationships that they want, or they don't have health insurance, or whatever it is, you threaten different aspects of their sort of stability, then addictions can be a way to manage those difficult feelings.
Right.
And that for me is a very different model than imagining that the person is pure, whole, and capable, and then you introduce the drug, and now it corrupts them. I used to think of it like as if you had a pool of clear water and then you're making it cloudy. Yeah, I don't think of it that way at all anymore. It's more like, oh, there's something happening here that's not serving. What needs are not being met? And how else might they be met?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with everything that you said, honestly. So my next question would be, based on what you just said, do you believe that addiction for some people can be outgrown? Like a resolution in those different aspects in life could mean that, you could relate to whatever the addictive behavior is in like a completely different way, or do you think it's a lifetime sentence?
Yeah, no, I hear the subtext here about different kinds of philosophies of recovery. Yeah. I know, a great interest of yours, and something I've really enjoyed talking with you about. For me, it has so much to do with the context and the constellation of other behaviors and experiences that people have, and relatively less to do with the specific stimulus like the drug.
Yeah.
Such that the drug is not the point, or not for me. And that is not to say that it's always safe and that people in recovery should use. I'm not saying that, but for me the drug is not the central part of the story. So some people in recovery will, you can recover. Absolutely, it's possible. And then what behaviors and experiences and contexts might you have in the rest of your life? Well, that can be a broad and diverse palette of things. But I also think of this like as if a person were healing from an injury. Like let's say you fall and you break your leg. Can you go snowboarding again? Well, yes. You're probably at greater risk of really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So the answer is not never go snowboarding, but rather, okay, let's be smart about this. What do we expect to happen? What are the resources I have? Should I snowboard in the middle of the wilderness and not tell anyone? Whatever. So,
Right.
yeah, yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
Be smart. There are risks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does the word recovery in the grand scheme of things mean to you?
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice word. Yeah. Well, we say the word. We say other words like health, and I guess what I am thinking of is that someone is thriving. And thriving, it's just using more and more words we haven't defined to.
Define thriving.
Oh God!
What does thriving mean?
Well, when I think of a healthy person, I think of someone whose body is that they're taking care of their body at its own boundaries.
Yeah.
Not everyone's body is the same, but things that I can do for my body include eating well and consistently and healthy amounts and good nutrition, exercising, and when I do these things, everything else in life is easier, and I consider that part of thriving. And in the mental and social realm, that would be having loving, mutually dependent relationships, and by which I mean you help each other, like it's give and take. And we want to be embedded within a system of these relationships. Like no one wants to just be served and then never give anything to anyone. Actually, that's an unhealthy place. Yeah. And it's unhealthy also to only serve and not get anything back. So for me, thriving also includes this network of interrelatedness, where someone can call on you if they need you, and you can do that with them too. Mm-hmm. And so, this is a long answer, but for me, recovery means, how are these spheres going? How's your physical health? How's your mental health? How is your social relationships? And you can add on extra layers of meaning and service to the community and things like that. And if addiction is damaging these other really core parts of life, then recovery is healing them and bringing into harmony the different aspects of our lives.
It's brilliant. I love that answer, and I couldn't agree more.
I'm glad we're on the same page with that. That's nice. Yeah. The more we talk about this, by the way, within the last year especially, I learned a lot from you. I because of the experiences you've had, you have a unique perspective that cannot be achieved just by reading books and such.
Really?
Absolutely. And I think that it's this merger between living your own personal story and you mentioned, maybe some future studies.
Yeah. It's
these things together that give such a strong foundation for serving others. I really think so, because let's say that you had only read about humans, and you're like, oh, they're this kind of creature. You have only an abstract vision, and then you come across one and they're hurting. You don't really understand what that is like. And okay, we don't ever really, really understand each other, but going through these kinds of experiences can help us get a lot closer. And that's the foundation of the relationships.
Wow. Yeah. It's so interesting. I get so much from interacting with you in this way, and I hung out with an old time friend, and just each of our unique experiences in life and what we go through. For me, I have this internal voice that's like, oh, you're never going to be good enough until you get your PhD. And then I talk to like others that like have a PhD and they're like, wait, like I also have that voice and it like manifests itself in this other unique way. And I get so much value from these exchanges because I realize that there's this fundamental core of humanity within us, and that when we can conversate the way that we do, we realize that, or I realize that we have far more in common than
absolutely
not.
I absolutely agree with that, and I think this sort of we've been talking a lot about things that we know. Something I don't know is how to stop that comparison cycle. So I absolutely still experience it, and so I see colleagues or friends achieving great things in their careers, and there's still a comparison. I feel it, and it hurts.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the voice is I'm not good enough, or it's I'm not going to succeed, or I'm not going to. I don't know. I don't even know what it's called. But we all know that comparison is damaging, and I feel it. It's damaging. It hurts me. Like when I focus on it brings me to focus on things like how many times my work is being published or cited or whatever. And none of those things are the service stuff we started with.
Right.
That's not what it's about. And it's so that focusing on that is the wrong, it's like measuring your health by, I don't know, whatever. It's something that's not about your health. And so that's damaging. But what I don't know is like practices in one's daily life that you would bring to do less comparison with others.
Yeah, I don't know that either. And right now at this point in my life, like one of the big answers is like meditation.
Oh, meditation.
Like when I sit down and honestly, like I really have made a goal to meditate for at least 20 minutes a day, and I'm trying to do 20 minutes in the morning and the evening, because I feel like there are certain times where I slip into that state where the past is an illusion, the future is an illusion, and in this moment I'm totally okay. Like I'm safe, I'm comfortable, and then even there are these occasional moments where extended periods go by where I'm not even lost in thought. Yeah. And that in itself is this, it's like an antidote to the comparison.
Wow.
And because that's something that like I'll just really suffer from also, and then I'll meditate and it'll like go away for a little bit, but then it's something that I always get like sucked back into. It's kind of like social media. Like I'll set these goals for myself with it. I'm like, okay, I'm only going to check my notifications once a week on Mondays between 7 and 7:10 in the morning. And then I'll like catch myself like scrolling through the news feed, and I'm like, no, that's like I told myself I'm not going to do that. And then I set the boundary again. And meditation is a way that it completely takes me to sort of the opposite side of the spectrum, to where I'm not comparing myself to others, because it is extremely painful. And a common thread that I've noticed is that like many of us do it, even humans who have accomplished magnificent things. So
you're making me think, though, there are tools. I think one of the big mistakes in this area is that people sometimes think that all they need to get from here to better is willpower. Mm-hmm. That they need to just be a stronger person, and magically the good behaviors come. And this is a real dangerous idea. What we need especially are contexts and tools that shape our behaviors into the more helpful behavior. Like surrounding yourself with people who eat healthy or who treat each other with respect just happens to sort of bring those things into our life in a way that is way stronger and easier than if you just tried to suddenly do those things on your own with no context. So when you mentioned websites, one thing, I use a tool that doesn't allow me to go to some websites at certain times. So you don't have to even make these boundaries necessarily in your own head all the time. You can also say, okay, well, computer, if I go to the website another time, it just says blocked. And then what's funny for me is that I'll just find myself typing in the website. Like my fingers do it, and then it's there, and then it's this block. And then I'm finally like, oh, interesting. I was trying to go to the website. I didn't have any awareness of that, totally unconscious. So you can use these tools as well. Oh, the same with food, and that, you know, if you have a big thing of chips right by your desk, like you'll eat them. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If you don't have them there, you won't eat them. So it's not even a willpower question. It's like availability. Yeah.
Right. I'm finding it interesting too as we're talking about these. You were talking about the different sort of circles of the Venn diagram that all lead to recovery, and it seems like these different topics fit into each of those circles in their own way. You know, whether it be meditation or your social circle, or I just noticed that, and it was really.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the same vision I'm having of this conversation. And I like that you brought up meditation, because I used to meditate more and regularly, and I'm sort of out of the habit right now, but I admire the regular practice, and I do think that it is maybe like a clarifier. We get lost in a lot of different challenges and concerns, and meditation is one way to see which ones of those you don't need to spend so much effort and worry about. That's how it feels to me. You're like, oh, this is what's happening now. It's surprisingly hard for us to realize that.
Yeah.
We're strange creatures.
We are very strange creatures. Yeah, sentience is an odd I was going to say affliction, but maybe that's the wrong word. Experience. I really appreciate you talking to me and doing this. It's been a pleasure. Is there anything you want to close out with?
I'm just so excited about your journey. So let's see what happens next.
Yeah.
No, thank you for having me, and look forward to hearing your next guests too.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you next time on the Coviderviews. Bye, guys.
Bye.